20% body fat is a dangerous spot to be. You're not overweight enough to look away from the mirror, but you're also not lean enough to feel confident with your shirt off at the beach. The problem is the strategy that got you to 20% won't get you to 13%. And guys who ignore what I'm about to share will stay stuck. So I'll show you the 5 simple shifts that even the busiest men can do to make getting lean predictable. 20% body fat is a trap. You can throw a shirt on and look fine. You might even get some compliments. So it can feel like there's no real urgency or pressure to get even leaner. The comfort zone quietly takes over. But under the surface, it's a different story. At 20% or above, your insulin sensitivity isn't great, your blood markers are not optimal, and there's still visceral fat in and around the belly. So if you're not driven toward your goal, it's easy to stop pushing forward. And as you know, success comes at a cost. Almost nobody will hold you accountable to your goals without having a vested interest in your results, like a coach or a mentor. However, many guys will say,
"Oh, I'm happy with where I'm at. I feel good, I'm healthy."
Which is just moving the goalpost from the future to today. However, if I offered you an instant 6-pack, there's no doubt you would take it. So here's where most guys get this wrong. Getting from 30% or 25% down to 20% can happen just putting in a little bit of effort, like cutting obvious junk food, eating super clean, going from training a little to a lot. And this works up to a point. But getting to the 13% isn't just about effort. Otherwise, everyone would be ripped already. It's not your genetics or stress or eating a little bit of carbs. It really comes down to your actual strategy, because below 20%, the small things matter. A few extra drinks on the weekend, extra healthy snacks in between your meals, loosening the rules from Friday to Sunday. Individually, these don't seem like a big deal, but combined, they can trap you in that 20 to 25% range for years, mainly because your strategy isn't actually evolving and changing. That's why the first things I do with my one-to-one clients is their nutrition strategy to get them into a legitimate fat loss phase. Link in the description to learn more about that. And this exposes a bigger issue about your deficit, which we'll fix next. Here's where people still completely misunderstand how fat loss actually works. They think it's about the diet, the low carb, high fat, keto, carnivore, fasting, Mediterranean, some juice cleanse or shake kit, whatever. The thing is, if your body fat isn't dropping, then you're simply not in a deficit. The diet is not doing the magic. The deficit is doing it. And before anyone says,
"Yeah, but I barely eat anything and I'm really healthy all the time,"
let's actually break this down properly. When you drop from 30% to 20%, that is because you were in a deficit. But once you get leaner, your metabolic margin also gets a little bit smaller. You weigh less, so you burn a little bit less. And when you diet, your unconscious movement drops. You move less. You may also naturally rest a little bit more. Also, you're eating less food, so the thermic effect of food does drop, which is only a minor effect. But the diet that worked to get the 10 or 20 pounds off doesn't work today. Then if you add extra drinks on a Friday or a Saturday night, snacking all day Sunday, you can wipe out 4 to 5 days of progress in one weekend. Something that most people miss is that you can actually get fat eating healthy food. Chicken, rice, salmon, eggs, avocado, nuts, it doesn't matter. More calories equals more calories. So if you feel stuck, the truth is you're actually just maintaining. And that is okay. Your metabolism isn't broken. Your hormones didn't crash. Sure, you may not be 100% optimized like Brian Johnson, but you're still alive. Although there is one thing that can have a noticeable impact on your BMR, and that is your thyroid. So it is worth checking your TSH, your free T4, and your free T3 on your blood test just in case. So once you master your deficit, fat loss stops feeling like this emotional journey and it just becomes mathematical. But even if you dial in the perfect deficit, you can still end up looking soft at 15% unless you make this next body composition shift. 15% or below doesn't actually guarantee that you're going to look like a ripped athlete. Many guys think, I'll just get lean first and then I'll focus on building muscle. But that's taking the slow road, because without muscle, you can look skinny fat, even at lower body fat ranges. For example, 2 guys at 15% body fat One with low muscle mass can look kind of skinny fat, and the other with 5 or 10 kilos more muscle, which is 10, 20 pounds, can look quite muscular and lean. The difference is their muscle to fat ratio. Generally speaking, guys at 20% or above simply don't have enough muscle yet. And this isn't just about aesthetics. More muscle improves insulin sensitivity, increases your BMR slightly over the long term. It's like a natural buffer against our natural metabolic decline, making it easier to stay lean and less easy to regain the fat. The problem is most guys try to train a lot, but they're not seeing results. Sweating, getting a pump, feeling sore, it's all fine, but that doesn't guarantee more muscle, nor does hitting the gym 5 or 6 days a week. If your lifts clearly haven't improved over the past 3 months, your strength and your muscle probably hasn't either. You don't need 5 workouts a week. That's very difficult to manage with busy work, events, kids, social life, and all that, which is why my clients, like David, only does 3 workouts a week. Because when you structure your workouts properly, you will progress over time. And one more thing, building muscle while starving yourself is almost impossible, which is why a very moderate controlled deficit is easier than being super strict and aggressive. So yes, you need a deficit, and yes, you need more muscle. But even if you fix both of those things, there's still something that catches most guys off guard once they start to make progress. So imagine that you are trying to save money, but every time you walk through the house or the office, there's cash sitting there on the table, and there's someone telling you you need to spend this now. Well, it's going to be hard to build wealth long term, right? And there's a similar effect with fat loss. This study, published in the Physiology and Behavior Journal, investigated 515 adults and tracked their food over 7 days. And they found that meals eaten with a spouse or a family were larger and eaten faster. And meals with friends were also larger and over a longer duration. So your results aren't all about your willpower and your motivation. It's your environment that literally changes your intake. Business lunches, client dinners, travel, late nights, alcohol, office snacks, the kids' leftovers, Uber Eats, skipping lunch but smashing 2 dinners, plus dessert. I'm not saying to stop all this, but you can have the perfect training plan. You can eat salads, you can hit the treadmill every day. But if your environment isn't set up for long-term success, it will quietly sabotage your efforts. And generic fat loss advice assumes that you have low stress, 8 hours of sleep a night, no kids, full meal prep control, and 0 social peer pressure. And that is not the reality for most business owners and professionals. So instead of waiting for your environment to be primo perfect, you need a system that works with an imperfect lifestyle. If you've got an event on Saturday, don't blow up on Friday and Saturday too, and then you're going to panic on Monday. If you're flying somewhere, walk around the airport. Don't sit all day and snack out of boredom. If consistency is your issue, try to lock in the exact same breakfast every day so you know what you're eating. Lock in 1 or 2 lunch options so there's no variability. Then you've only got dinner to worry about. Get your steps in between the gaps of your days. And just commit to 2 or 3 structured workouts a week. Because doing fewer things properly is going to beat doing way more things poorly. And also, after your meal, clean your plate, stand up, move around a little bit, go for a short walk. It's going to help digestion and lower blood sugar spikes. You can also try brushing your teeth after your dinner so that you're not going to go eat more afterwards. And if alcohol is your weakness, set your number before you go out, before you open the bottle, right? Not after you're already 2 or 3 drinks in. Another thing is not to leave snacks in plain sight. Hide them in your fridge or in your pantry out of eyesight. And a small thing that actually has quite a big impact is to be okay with saying no thanks. Unless there's a gun to your head, you don't need to say yes to everything. Look, anyone can take an extreme approach, but nobody that I know can maintain it because their environment and their lifestyle isn't built for that. If you're not trying to be an Ironman or an Olympic athlete, then your routine doesn't need to look like that. The thing is, even when you tidy up your environment, there's still one final shift that decides whether you hit 13% and actually stay there. Consider this. If you see yourself as a non-smoker, but then you light up a cigarette or someone gives one to you to smoke, it's going to feel wrong. And that internal friction is called cognitive dissonance, a concept founded by psychologist Leon Festinger in 1957. Put simply, your brain doesn't like behavior that contradicts your identity, how you see yourself. So if you see yourself as, I'm a foodie, or I'm a wine or beer guy, I'm a stress eater, or I'm someone who just can't lose weight, then eating differently and training consistently and saying no, it's going to feel completely unnatural and uncomfortable. But it's that dissonance and that discomfort that isn't actually a failure. It's a good sign. The problem is most people crack under pressure and relieve that tension by snapping back to the old familiar habits that keep them stuck. Now here's the important part. There's research published in the Journal of Environmental Psychology showing that our self-identity significantly predicts consistent behavior, and that identity becomes stronger when people repeatedly perform actions aligned with that. In simple terms, you don't become lean and then act like the lean person, right? You repeatedly act like the lean person until your identity updates itself. But that doesn't happen in a 6 to 12 week shred challenge, right? Your old habits run very deep. And if it took you 6 years to get to 30% body fat, expecting to fix that in 6 weeks is a little bit insane. However, in the beginning, it can feel very forced. And that's that dissonance that causes most people to quit. But when you have a sustainable fat loss strategy that optimizes your metabolism, your deficit, and your muscle, then you can be consistent with your new actions, and then your identity catches up to it. The guys sitting at 13 to 50% body fat year round deal with the same weekends, the same stress, the same off-plan meals, but they don't panic. They're playing the long game so that one big meal doesn't make them fat, but one workout isn't going to make them lean. They don't overthink it. They just do it. And that new identity is not given. It is earned. If you want help building a strategy that upgrades your environment, your habits, and to ditch the old you and become the lean guy who is fit, strong, with muscle definition, without sacrificing your whole life for it, that is exactly what my metabolic recon method is built for. To learn more, tap the link in the description, then go watch this video to learn the 4 stages of losing belly fat that no one talks about.